يا لغتي عربية حسبي بأنك منطقي وبياني عربية قلبي.
Our ontology, right, is actually a religious mechanism. And they're valid models. Now, you might think, okay, well, valid doesn't necessarily mean true, and that's where we have the religious discussion, and I'm fair that. But they are valid models. So, for example, as a Muslim, I say I believe in the fitrah. I believe the idea that every human being is born with a predisposition to believe in God. كل مولود يولد على الفطرة. The Prophet said everyone who is born on the predisposition. That fitrah is a metaphysical explanation which explains the physical reality of first-person subjective experience. So for me, it's a more comprehensive account of why man is the way he or she is. Do you see what I mean?
I sort of do, but to me it just raises more questions that are unanswered.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I sort of go with Wittgenstein on this to say, what did he say? Whereof we cannot speak, thereof we should remain silent.
Yes.
So in other words, there are limits to language. We have to recognise them. And what Wittgenstein said, and he was actually a profoundly religious man.
Yeah.
But not in the conventional sense. So he struggled with this all his life to find out what it really meant. So maybe I'm sort of on the same track. So what I was going to say is that I recognise that there are, if you like, truths about our predicament, our situation in the world, that the Christian church, the Islamic traditions, Buddhists, Hindus and so on, they're all in their own ways.
Yeah.
Because they've been at it for thousands of years, hundreds of thousands of years. They've come up with something, haven't they? They must have come up with something. It hasn't been all wasted all this time.
Yeah.
So when I go into, I sometimes go to Southern Cathedral to take part in the Sunday morning thing, which is full on bells and smells. It's brilliant. It requires not your cup of tea probably, but to me it says it all. It summates the community that I'm part of, the history, its depth in this country where I am. And so that's not something you can write down as an equation. That has to be experienced. So you can go, if you don't want to do that, go into the National Gallery and contemplate some, just a painting by Constable.
Yeah.
It's our landscape, our people in it, our history, the way they.
Do you know? Can I put something to you guys? And maybe I'm wrong, right? But I'll ask you an honest question. I think a lot of the reason why. Are you from Britain? Are you English?
No, I was born in Australia. I came in 20 years ago.
Oh, okay, nice one. So, a lot of this is from my experience. I'm not saying you guys, but a lot of the reason why, like for example, a white man or a white woman might not feel comfortable with the Islamic tradition, right? Is because it originated in a different hemisphere or different part of the world. I feel like there is this. All of us human beings have this connection with our heritage, you could say, tradition.
Exactly.
However, what we need to do is differentiate between traditional realities and truth, right? I think the first step to sincerity is to realize that, okay, this is what's happening, right? For the last, I would say, maybe 300 years, 200-300 years, the Western world has started to dominate, I believe, last 200-300 years. Before that, to be honest with you, you could cite the European Dark Ages, right? There wasn't really much going on in terms of cultural, scientific or technological. There wasn't.
If you want to go back 1,000 years, that's not the truth. Not 500.
1485. 1485, pre-Renaissance.
North America in 1492.
Yeah, 1485. I said, but 1485 before that, really.
Greece and Rome, they're in Europe, are they not?
Okay, no, that's a good point. Greece is an exception. What I'm saying is like what
I want to say is that wherever you go
I'm not saying exactly.
Periods of darkness, periods of glory.
Exactly. Thank you very much. Do you know there's a beautiful book written by Arnold J. Toynbee. What's his?
The Decline and Fall of the Roman.
Yes, you know what I'm talking about. 19 volumes. It's very, very voluminous. It talks about
it's still waiting. It's still on my bookshelf.
Sorry, no, it's too massive. Like
I know.
It's a 19. He mentions.
More time to read.
He mentions 19 civilizations, right? Anyways, the point, and there's another really interesting book written by Paul Kennedy.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You know, The Rise and Fall of Great Powers.
Yeah.
Yeah, The Rise and Fall of Great Powers. But he goes from like 1500 onwards.
Okay.
And he wanted to look at the genesis, the kind of how the high points, and then how the civilizations decay and decline. The thing is, sometimes we do have, and I'm not pointing the finger at anyone, but sometimes we do have a superiority complex. I think that's just the post-colonial reality.
Sorry, who's the we?
In the West, we. Yeah, I mean, I'm born here. Yeah, I'm born here. I share a cultural heritage with the West. I was born same. Yeah, I was born here. Same as possible. I'm in two places. Yeah. I'm in two places. I can see the Middle East and I can see the West, and I share the cultural baggage of both of those places.
It's next year to have it dressed up in a Morris dancing outfit, touring the villages of Shropshire.
I don't know. I don't think you succeeded in that challenge.
No, the beard will work quite well in that.
Yeah, but the point is this. I think, do you know there's a verse in the Quran that says, وَتِلْكَ الْأَيَّامُ نُدَاوِلُهَا بَيْنَ النَّاسِ. It says that these are the days which we alternate between the people. This verse was revealed when Muslims had lost a particular war called Uhud. The point being is that, for example, the Islamic Golden Age was from 750 to about 1250, right? About 750 to about 1250. The Dark Ages in Europe was from around, let's say, 410 to about 1485, which is about. I believe that.
Nonsense.
Well, go on. Well, hold on. I believe the Dark Ages in Europe were the Middle Ages.
First of all,
what are the Middle Ages?
The term Dark Age is not used by historians.
It is by some.
It isn't.
It is by some. There is a discussion.
Honestly.
Okay, let's go through. Let's go. Let's do what we did today. Okay, no problem.
Where are you talking about? In Europe's quite complicated. So there's.
No, accept it. No. I'm talking. Okay, let's.
How do you define a Dark Age?
The Dark Ages is defined for me as a period of time where Europe was. Its contribution to science, technology and culture was lacking comparative to other civilizations. So for example, we'll take the case study of Britain, okay? Let's not look from 410 to 10, was it? To 410 to 1485. That's about 1,000 years.
1485 you want to?
Yeah, because that's the Tudor dynasty and obviously like early modern period. But let's look from 1066 right to 1485. Let's look at William I, William II, Henry, Stephen, Henry II, you know what I'm saying, Richard III. Let's look at after that Edward I, Edward II, Edward III, John, you know what I'm saying, Richard II. Let's take a look at Henry IV, Henry V, Henry VI, and then, you know what I'm saying, let's take a look at Edward, and then Edward again, and then Richard III.
Prove that you can recite the Kings of England. Round of applause.
What happened? What was the contribution?
Defeat the Muslims and try to push into France. The Muslims were trying to push into Europe and they were repelled by the Europeans. True. So if the Muslims were so advanced, the Europeans were so backward. How did that happen?
What? Yeah, okay, so...
Charles Martel defeated the Muslims.
Yeah, that's true. That's France. You know what Gombrich said about this?
732. Which is right in the middle of your alleged Dark Age.
No, I said 750. I said the Golden Age is from 750 to 450.
Okay. Oh, I see. So
anyways, no, but it's still. No, the point is, I'm not trying to say that one is better than the other. I'm just saying. No, I'm not. I'm saying the same thing as what you're saying.
To a certain extent,
I'm saying that we all had our turns.
In that period,
as civilizations,
the Islamic world, if you like,
had a higher cultural contribution than the European world.
Compared with all those,
yeah, I reckon
it was probably
everyone had their turn.
Probably in culture terms, a backwater. I'm not, I'm not as much of a historian. But this is the great age of cathedral building.
Yeah.
You've got philosophers, St. Augustine, wasn't it Anselm, a whole range of Occam, all sorts of people who were engaged with the rest of Europe, which again was engaging with the Islamic world. that sort of thing. You had technology. I mean, people tend to think that technology only really started kicking off with the Industrial Revolution. When the Industrial Revolution started, it was using a lot of techniques and stuff that had actually been worked on for that long period of.
Yeah, and the Industrial Revolution, 1760.
They had the monasteries, the powerhouses of agriculture, reclaiming land.
No, yeah,
you
no,
had the
look.
wealth increasing year by year. Obviously, you had the Black Death, you had wars and so on.
Right. But
You had
a lot of the
liberation.
reason why.
Wait a minute.
Yeah, sorry.
You recited the list of things. May I recite some of the actual achievements?
Go on. No, by the way, I'm not taking away from the achievement of Britain.
Social changes.
I think that it's probably had one of the biggest contributions in civilization.
In some ways, the Black Death was one of the luckiest things that happened to any country because it started liberating the peasants from their overlords. So essentially, you get free men, working their own land, selling their labour. You move through like you said, the Tudor period to nascent capitalism, mercantilism, onward into the Industrial Revolution. So the Black Death is actually quite important. It creates a labour shortage, which meant that the lords had less of a hold on their peasantry. You had the peasants revolt politically. Come on, the ideas were coming out.
Yeah, but that's not a culture.
The Magna Carta.
Yeah,
That's
but
not cultural.
No. I mean scientific and technological. I'm not talking about peasants revolt. I don't think that's a. I mean, well, so what?
When it came to the crunch, you see this. I'm pointing to things that are genuine achievements. Because when it came to that crunch,
Why is the peasants revolt a cultural contribution?
Part of the Magna Carta. This notion of Englishmen being free, and that's so rooted in it.
That's more, I would say, post-Tudor.
No, it's there all the way back to the idea of a free peasant running his own land, that sort of thing.
Fair enough. Okay, the peasants revolt. Peasants revolt. Yeah.
Now, when you said earlier, and you pointed out that Islam is perhaps unnatural to strange, I was going to say exactly that. And one of the reasons is because it's the ideas of free speech. You stand in the Speaker's Corner, you can see it.
Say again, sorry?
The ideas of free speech.
Yeah.
Freedom of thought. All those sort of things.
Then you leave. That's post-enlightenment.
They didn't pop into existence perfectly.
Yeah, all right, fair
It was
enough.
a long struggle. You had class struggles. You had the peasants against the aristocracy.
But I'll tell you the truth about this, because here we're conflating two. There's two or three things. I agree. No. By the way, I'm not playing this game of. I've said this before and I'll say it again. I believe that Britain, in terms of the world context, especially in the post early modern period, I feel like
post-early modern period.
Yeah. So like after 1485, post-Renaissance period. Okay. So after 1485,
Yeah.
I believe that Britain has probably been one of the, if not probably one of the top world contributors to science, technology, like the Industrial Revolution. I agree with that.
I was trying to
However,
the roots of that were earlier.
No, not to the Anglo-Saxons. I don't think the Anglo-Saxons did much.
The notion of individual freedom and
Fair enough, but the Anglo-Saxons were
fused with Christianity. Starts it off. No, I wouldn't argue that was it. It's just one of the strands that goes into. And then you got the Norman flux, with the
Once again, what did the Normans really
What the Normans
do
for us? Cathedrals.
Yeah, castles.
Well, yeah, it's a good point. I mean, it's an interesting question. How we
Look, what I'm trying to say to you is this, right? The point is this. In logic, in logic, right? There's something called the first thing they teach you is the genetic fallacy. The genetic fallacy is to falsify an idea based on its origins. So something is wrong because it comes. So a lot of people now, and I think this is the problem of sincerity, because we have a 25-year-old superpower or 26-year-old superpower called the United States of America, and I'm counting after post-World War, Cold War. Yeah. So you have a 25-year-old superpower called the United States of America. We assume, as a result of that actually because the United States and its extensions, or Europe and its extension of the United States, is economically and militarily on top of the world, and has been for the last 25 years, or if you want to count from when the last Soviet soldiers left in 94, whatever, like 20 years or whatever it was, 22 years, 23 years, if it's 94, then in that case, we feel like we are right and they are wrong, right? And by the way, so from and this is post-colonialism in a nutshell, because like a lot of people feel like because we're in this superficial Western bubble of cultural superiority, that actually those guys don't know what they're talking about. But we have to. That's a snapshot of image. That's a snapshot of history.
Yeah.
We're looking at the tip of the iceberg when we look at that. The Quran. Do you know what it asks? One of the major questions it asks.
What's the major question?
One of the major questions it asks when a prophet goes to a people. It says to that prophet goes to the people. Look at the people. الذين خلوا من قبلكم. They're the ones who come before. Yeah. So, or the ones who have come before you. In other words, look at the people who have come before you. They have been destroyed, basically. Civilizations of before, of yesterday, have been destroyed. We look at them in history books, and that's why I was referencing the rise and fall of great powers by Kennedy, or Arnold J. Toynbee's book about civilizations. Because when we look back at history, we have sincerity about the present. We start realizing, okay, we do have a superpower called the United States, what Kalinikos calls the United States Empire. We do have that. But just because the United States is selling Big Macs and, you know, has Hollywood and it's on top now, it doesn't mean that's going to continue, A, being the case. Two, it doesn't mean that its ideas, its post-Enlightenment ideas, all of them are actually true. It doesn't give it moral validity. It doesn't give it objective reality. And so from that perspective, I feel like, and that's going back to genetic fallacy, right? We need to start looking at moral ideas, religious ideas, with an objective eye, forgetting about where we're from and who we belong to, because that's a different discussion. You see what I mean?
Sort of, and I think the supremacy of the West in recent centuries, I think, is highly correlated with the declination of belief in the West. The scientific method is meant to approach things with an open mind and use rational thought. Religion is about revelation and being taught what Allah wants or God wants.
No, but let me tell you something. I did something interesting. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
That I think there's almost like a paradigm shift.
Yeah.
That if we're talking about religion, which you were talking about,
Yeah.
talking about the Quran, the reason for the supremacy of the West at the moment is because the West has become less religious and they're more open to intellectual discussions.
I would agree with that to a certain extent.
From metaphysical debates about what cannot be.
Look, I agree with you. When the West decided to separate from the church, that's what happened. But let me tell you something. That's not a full analysis, and I'll tell you why. If you look at the period of time, do you know there's an interesting tool you could use? It's called Ngram. Google Ngram. It's a really powerful tool. Do you know what it shows? I don't know how they've done this, but Google have been able to collate information of like what books are being read and stuff like that, and you can put keywords and see how much is being read in libraries. Yeah, it goes back to the 1800s. It goes back to it's really interesting. You can check it out. If you write the word Christianity or Google Ngram, you'll see an incredible shift downward. If you write the word science, you'll see an exponential shift upward. So that does confirm what you're saying. However, it's true. Sorry, bro. Sorry, where it's true that where the West has become less religious, it's become more successful. The opposite is true with the Arab world. When the Arab world was more religious, it was more successful, and that can almost be correlated. Now, it doesn't mean anything. Correlation does not mean causation. So a lot of people, and this is once again one of the fallacies that a lot of atheists have convinced themselves with. Say, okay, well, once we dumped superstition, we've got rid of superstition. We've got rid of religion. We found prosperity, economic, military, and social prosperity. Yeah, that's true. That correlation does exist in the historical record, and I'll be the first one to admit that to you, in the West. The opposite is exactly true in the Middle East. The exact opposite, sorry.
Do you think that,
like looking at that ascension period.
they were more religious than they are now?
Pardon?
Do you think people 1,000 years ago in the Middle East were more religious than they are now?
Yeah, 100%. From 750.
We're still very religious in the Middle East.
I agree with that, but I would say that from that period of time which we talk about the ascension, there was a collective empire, which was the Islamic Empire, which extended from Spain to China, right? That doesn't exist anymore. The civilizational Islam has collapsed. When you have a top-down model, where you can have actually rules imposed, Islamic rules on a political level, clearly that would facilitate religiosity for the populace. And from what we've read in history from that period, the idea of religious war, for example, the Crusades, which took place from anywhere between, I don't know, 1099 up until the 1200s. Yeah, religion. Now that's still happening, but in groups, like Al Qaeda. These things are groups. Before it used to be a cohesive effort with empires. Now it's nation states. Like the last Arab wars that have happened, all of them are nationalistic wars. None of them are actually religiously based. If you look at most of wars that have happened in the Arab world now, the last 100 years, the Arabs have fought on behalf of their country, and that's the reason why I believe they failed. They failed because they haven't been able to utilize the wider Muslim community. It's an interesting discussion with Bernard Lewis. You know, he talks about that. But the point is this, really, generally speaking, that correlation doesn't mean causation, though. But the idea of that's still in the atheist's mind. The atheist thinks. I know, but a lot of people do think this. Maybe it's unconscious. No, I'm not in everyone. In many atheists, maybe you're right. A lot of post-colonialist kind of atheists do believe that now we have X, Y, Z. Now we have military, economic power. We have cultural advancement, as they would call it, and they can never track that anyways because there's nothing to anchor the West. But that means that happened when we got rid of religion, therefore religion is bad. That's what they think. But there's nothing to show that. That's the Western man's story, that's the white man's story, to be crude about it. That's the post-colonial man's story. That's not the Muslim man's story. The Muslim man has the exact opposite story. The period of glory for all of the countries from Morocco all the way to that period in China was when it was united under that system. So I believe it all depends.
Well, that's a huge area that you've opened up. I couldn't possibly comment. I spend a few weeks thinking about that.
The Middle East is backward by comparison with the West, just because it's much more religious than the West.
Well,
I argue strongly that is the case.
Well, it's become less religious, it's become more backward.
Well, that's a very comparative term. That's backward compared to what? Maybe to what it was before.
It's backward in terms of technologically and scientifically.
Empire spread in the old days, not by intellect, but by the power of the sword.
Yeah, okay.
And all races, right?
Yeah.
The Mongols invaded Europe, the Muslims invaded North Africa, and so on. The Europeans had all their wars and so on.
Yeah.
So, cultural influence those days was by which army was strongest.
Yeah, exactly.
These days it's changed. It's not so much the power of the sword, it's the power of thought. It's the power of technology.
I still believe it's the power of the... By the way, it's an interesting point you make. In international relations, there's two schools of thought. There's the liberal school of thought and the realist school of thought. The realist school of thought, I can't remember the guy that propagates this. It's the one main guy that everyone references, but the realist school of thought maintains that even today, the power is with the sword. So the figurative sword. Hobbes said covenants are but words if they're not backed by swords, right?
Is that Huffington, the Clash of Civilizations? The Clash of Civilizations bloke?
No, Hobbes.
Oh, Hobbes.
Thomas Hobbes. Yeah, Thomas Hobbes.
Right, it's going back a bit further.
Yeah, no. Clash of, yeah. That's another thing. That year he published a Clash of Civilizations. But the point is that I'm making that this whole narrative of religion causes technological, cultural, and scientific weakness could be said maybe of the West, but couldn't be said of the Middle East. There's no evidence of it. The opposite is true. If you want to take the correlation.
You know what?
You agree, yeah?
I would assume, it's a nice word, isn't it? Assume.
Yeah.
Any of these wide-ranging, sweeping explanations, I think they're dubious. I know they're quite a lot of writers.
I agree. I do agree.
I think the more I look into it, the more I realise history is fractal. So in other words, you start off with a kind of generalised thing, like what you've been saying, and then you think, right, okay, how do I back that up? So you look into it, and you think, oh, wait a minute, that doesn't quite fit, and so on. And you end up with, essentially, if you drill down far enough, you end up with the actions of individual people over history, and it's very contingent. You know, can you pull out of that wide forces? People argue about these things no end. We still don't really know why the Industrial Revolution happened here. I mean, we have some ideas.
Coal, steel.
But things happened, you know, and it was individuals in the right place. the right minds in the right place.
Empire as well.
And whatever. And it's
Yeah.
all sorts of things, you know. And I know that, you know, it's quite people make a living out of doing these grand theories. And I suppose there has to be some sort of truth in it. Maybe.
Yeah, I agree with
Then
this point.
Then you read another book that says the opposite.
Yes, yes.
Hang on, these guys spend the whole life doing this thing. So what am I to make of this? You know, two opposite opinions.
Yes.
Straight arguing with each other. So, you know, I perhaps, you know, I'd take with it with a pinch of salt some of the grand theories.
I like that approach. I think you're right. I agree. Meta narratives. You got a bit, sociological meta narratives.
See,
Yeah.
I'm very much, and this is a sort of English thing, which is going back to Edmund Burke.
Yeah. Conservative guy.
And it's really answering.
Are you? Would you say that you're
I'm
that
a
school of thought?
conservative, yeah.
That's why you call yourself an atheist Christian, isn't it?
Yeah.
No one else would call themselves that except for a Burkean.
You can swap the
I knew you were a
ideas.
Burkean. I knew that for a fact.
And I see the attraction of that, and it really answers your idea, the point you made earlier. I think you were sort of leading towards the idea of a sort of universalisation of truth or something like that. I can't remember. And I would argue against that from the Burkean perspective, that all these things, and he was right, you know, not James Burke, Edmund. So Irish
Conservative
thinker. And he wrote one of his most influential pieces on the eve of the French Revolution. And he pointed out that any movement, any ideology that claims some sort of ultimate truth is going to end in disaster. And you know, the French Revolution was pretty bad for a while. And I'd say that. You see, when I sort of I'm sceptical about. I'm not sceptical about religion as such. I'm sceptical about totalising ideologies. So any ideology which claims absolute truth. So in that,
why are you sceptical?
Fascism, communism.
Why though?
Because I'm a Burkean. So I say that what works? What works is the local, the practical.
But I mean,
based on you know,
Burkean conservatism.
And you see, the thing is, it's always quite messy. It's contingent.
Right.
So it does not appeal to some sort of template or utopia. It actually says we are where we are because because our ancestors have done certain things.
Yeah, I know.
And a big thing here with him, and it kind of bounces off Confucianism in China, this idea of respect for one's ancestors, and also respect for people to come in the future. So it's built around that, but it has to be built around a sense of the local.
Yeah.
Because that's what we are. We know our families, we know our tribes.
Yeah.
Which isn't to say that
I sympathise with some of that. Are you a Burkean as well? Are you more pragmatic?
I've read Burke, so
You don't have to read these people, you just have to read something about them. Read Wikipedia.
You would like National Socialism then?
Sorry?
You would like National Socialism?
Well, that is the problem with that. Well spotted, mate. Oh, you go, yeah.
Thanks a lot, man.
Yeah.
See you later. You too, man. Take care, man.
No, you're absolutely right.
I'll leave you to it. I'm going to talk to you a bit. All right.